Bad time.
Shut the curtains.
We have a crowd.
Shut the curtains.
I cover most of it. She puts her bicep up.
We did that in the
sadly.
kitchen on Friday night.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, is it on right now?
No, I mean we haven't started, but film is rolling. Of course it is. All right. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Let's do it. Hey everybody, this is Jerry Escalada, and this is episode 25 of Thrive TV. Today,
We have onlookers here.
today we have a little crowd, one more distracting than the other. That's nothing overly personal. Sharon. Today, we're going to finish our macronutrient series. So last week we talked about proteins, right?
Yes.
The week before that we talked about carbohydrates, how both of them react in your body, a little bit about how you should utilize them depending on what your goals are. Today we're going to finish our series with fats. Okay, we're going to cover what kinds of fats there are, where you can find them, and how you should place them in depending again on what your goals are. Okay?
Okay.
Trevi,
Yeah.
where are we
Ready?
starting today?
We're going to start once again with the definition of what a fat is. Fats are organic molecules of hydrogen and carbon that are bound together in these longer chains called hydrocarbons. And how they are put together and arranged determines the type of fat that it is. The simplest form of a fat is broken down into what's called fatty acid. So there's three main types of fats. Monounsaturated fats, which are olive oil, just a couple examples. Olive oil, avocados, some of your nuts, almonds are monounsaturated. Polyunsaturated fats are the omega-3s and 6s, flaxseed, hemp seed, fish, and the vegetable oils that are created industrially and placed out in the grocery store are polyunsaturated fats. And then we have saturated fats, which are your animal fats and your tropical oils like coconut oil. So most sources of fat in our diet are are a combination of fats. So there's not a food that's just saturated fat. They have all different of the three blended in. For example, like eggs, people think are full of saturated fat, where they really are mainly monounsaturated. 43% of an egg is monounsaturated fat. Then the 39% is saturated fat, and then you have like 18% of polyunsaturated fat. So all of the food you eat is a combination. What's important to remember is whatever the majority of the fat is in the food is what contributes to the chemical property of the fat. So if it's mainly a saturated fats are solid at room temperature, then it would be solid. So that kind of gives you some idea of the three different types of fats. Another type of fat that I want to talk about, because you hear about this so much, is what is a trans fat. So while there's some naturally occurring trans fats out there in food, the majority of them are processed and created that way. And when I say that, the industry takes and they pass hydrogen molecules through that fat to make that fat more palatable to us and to have a longer shelf life. So if they're wanting to take a fat, for example, that's normally liquid and make it solid so that they can put it in a processed food, then they hydrogenate it. And that's where
the trans
fats come in. And trans fats are not healthy fats. You really want to limit those type of trans fats in your diet. So the other word that you may be familiar with is triglycerides. Triglycerides also come from our food, but triglycerides mainly are the storage form of fat in the body. So when you're looking at your triglyceride level
numbers,
then that's what you're looking at is the storage of the fat in your body. So the next thing is, let's talk about digestion and how they're absorbed. Digestion occurs in your small intestines, and it takes a multitude of steps to break down a fat. It's a very long process. You might eat a fat now, but it'll be hours later before it's broken
fully
down and ready to enter into your bloodstream.
Because like we talked about before with calories, the fats have more calories than carbohydrates and proteins.
They're the most microdense.
So they're bound together.
But anyway, they're the most energy dense of all the macros. So it takes your body several steps to break down. It's too complex to go in here, but just know that it's not something that you're going to eat and it's going to go right in like a simple carbohydrate or whatever. So the other thing is that you either use it for energy or it goes to storage. So if you're, as we talked about with carbohydrates, that is a very readily used energy source. So if you're eating a diet that's full of carbohydrates, then any fat you take in is going to go to going to go to storage because your body is burning the carbohydrates for fuel and not the fat that you're taking in. So that's, which I talked about, they're the most energy dense macro that we have. They manufacture and balance our hormones that we have in our body. They form the cell membranes, and we'll talk a little bit more about this a little bit later. I think that's really cool how the fats that you take in create your cell wall membranes, and that's really important. They transport your fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K. So if you don't take in enough fat,
then those vitamins
are not transported through your body and put to work like they need to be.
Even if you're deficient in vitamin D, and
then you're not taking
a vitamin D supplement,
and you're not eating fat,
right? It doesn't matter.
No, it doesn't matter.
Zero-sum game at that point,
right? And then fats, the fat are used to make. There's essential fatty acids that we cannot get from our food when we talked about essential protein.
Amino acids.
Right. So we also have essential fatty acids, which are the omega-3s and 6s.
That your body can't.
That our bodies cannot make. So we have to take those in through our food. So let's talk about, since we're on fats and the scary subject of where it all went wrong and why I feel we are where we are today in our health problems with this, what they taught us to be afraid of fats years ago. This happened, more than 30 years ago, back in the 1970s, whenever they saw that a lot of people were dying from heart disease. This doctor named Ansel Keys, who was a pathologist, which I thought was kind of interesting, started studying. He was hired to study the effects of fat and the diet because that's where they felt there was a problem. So he went and studied his research is the 7 countries. He went in and studied people in other countries, but the underlying problem with what he found was that his research was flawed. He cherry-picked his countries to reflect and support his theory as to fats in our diet causing heart disease. So even though a lot of the scientists at that time stood up and tried to argue with him and prove and show him that he was incorrect and what he had felt was the underlying problem, he didn't listen because at the time margarine was coming out onto the market. Crisco was coming out, and a lot of those companies funded his pockets, and that's where we got all twisted up in fats being wrong. So they've gone back and looked at his research, and they see now that the problem is he didn't take into account all the carbohydrates, refined carbohydrates, and sugar, and all that was also in the diet, which they have now accepted is probably linked to chronic disease.
Well, and what I find extremely interesting was it last year we did that. Last year when we did that talk, I did a couple graphs on obesity and diabetes, and around the time it was about 5 to 10 years later that his study came out, when the government and
Changed
big
the food
corporations
pyramid.
started pushing low fat, high
grain.
whole grain, high whole grain,
and
whole
carbohydrates,
foods.
refined foods, right?
That you see all of a sudden this steady climb in obesity and
heart disease,
diabetes and heart disease, right around the early 80s.
Right.
Climb, and it really hasn't. It's kind of plateaued and slowed down a little bit, but it's still sort of peaking up. So it's interesting that around that time, once this study came out, they started pushing low fat. Then all of a sudden things just went boom.
We didn't get any healthier because of this. What did come out of this, which I think is interesting, is the pharmaceutical companies started promoting and researching drugs to fight high cholesterol. And that's where all the statins started
coming from.
So that also, it's difficult for those people to now come out, because they're going to take money out of their pocket if they come out and start, say,
all of a sudden
fats aren't linked
as
to
bad
heart
as
disease.
we thought.
So I wanted to, kind of step back and just mention cholesterol here very briefly, because people may not realize that we only get about 25% of our diet is where we get our cholesterol from. Our bodies make 75%.
25% of your internal cholesterol comes from your diet.
Right. Yes. 75% of it our body creates itself. And so, like I've said before, our bodies are just wonderful things that it is able to sense that. So if you're not taking in a lot of cholesterol from your diet, then your body can regulate that and produce more. And if you are taking in more cholesterol, then your body can downgrade the production of cholesterol. So cholesterol is odd in the fact that when doctors say you have high cholesterol, they also need to look at the molecule.
Right, the number, the breakdown.
The breakdown, and that's not routine. You can.
So a 250 cholesterol or a 280 cholesterol may not mean a whole lot if you have high density or HDL cholesterol is bigger, or even your LDL. LDL is not necessarily a bad thing, because there are two types of LDL, right? Higher density and lower density.
Ones
So not having that understanding and having that breakdown misconstrues things.
Right, exactly. So, really, you really need to ask your doctor, and when they're talking to you about your cholesterol, is, well, do I have fluffy LDL or do I have small LDL? Because that's really important to know. So that's where our country kind of went wrong, and now they're stepping back and kind of re-looking at that, and you're seeing that all this, that maybe fat isn't linked to heart disease, that it's the inflammation that we carry around. Interesting, yesterday I was at my dentist, and they were talking to me, my hygienist was talking to me about a seminar that she went to, and it talked about heart disease. And that the physician that was there and a nurse practitioner have written a book, I think it's called Beat the Heart Gene or something. Anyway, they talked about fat and your cholesterol not being the cause of heart attacks, that it's the inflammation that does that to our body, that makes you sick with that. So I'm happy to see that people are really looking truly and turn their minds away from all this low fat and high refined carbohydrate diet and all of that. So I think that's a good thing. So fats are good if you take them in balance. So the problem is, when you are eating a diet high in fat, you want to make sure that you are eating whole foods and not additional processed food. There's going to be the bad mix.
So a Oreo that probably has 10 grams of fat per 2 cookies, I don't know, 2 or 3 cookies, that's not equivalent to the handful of almonds that has 10 grams of fat in it as well.
Not at all. You have to look at the quality of the fats that you're eating. So it's not
the combination of
right. It's not going to do you any good to be cooking all of your food with coconut oil because that's healthy. If you are eating a diet high in processed food, junk food, sugar, that's a bad combination. That's where you get into trouble. So if if you're eating a lot of coconut oil, which is touted as a saturated fat, which it is, and you are eating whole foods, and you're eating grass-fed beef and all wild-caught seafood and those kind of things, odds are you're not going to have a problem. You're going to, by eating saturated fats, you might elevate your LDL, but you're also going to elevate your HDL along with that. So, and the HDL cholesterol is your good cholesterol that protects you. So, you have to take them in balance. Let's talk about cavemen. Back years ago, our ancestors, humans were evolved to eat marine life, fatty meats. That's what they did years and years ago, and the omega-3 to 6 ratio in our body was 1-to-1. Okay, it was very balanced and everything was good. And then our modern diet came into being, and that has significantly skewed that balance to the fact that the balance now omega-6 to omega-3 is anywhere from 16 to 20 to 1. So there's where you need to be focusing.
That's where inflammation comes from.
You need to be focusing on that.
When that number gets too much.
Right. So that's an inflammatory situation that you are having in your body that's linked to diabetes, obesity, insulin resistance, cancer, Alzheimer's, all of that. So you want to take your fats in balance, look at the quality of the fat that you're eating, and where the rest of your diet is sitting. How you can, let's mention briefly how you can get in more omega-3s, because omega-6s are necessary.
Yeah, but they're easy also.
They're easy because they're in so much things. They're in, if you're cooking with, bad oils, you're getting a lot of omega-6s there. Omega-3s are the ones that you really have to consciously work to pull into your body.
Well, even nuts have a lot of omega-6s in them.
Exactly.
Like you said, omega-6 is a healthy fat, but the problem is we get too many.
Right.
Most people. And you already talked about trans fats and them, how they process it. Well, there's your omega-6 right there. And since a lot of people eat processed foods or just boxed foods in general, regardless if it's actually processed in the sense that it's a snack, but even if it's even if it's in a box, a lean cuisine or whatever, they have to preserve it somehow, or they have to make it flavorful somehow to keep it there for a long time. So they're throwing in some sort of omega-6 mixture in there that's spiking that number. Right.
So the easiest thing you can do is just to supplement yourself with fish oil. Fish oil is omega-3. Take that in, every day, and that's going to help drop that balance, bring it back into alignment. When you're looking at balancing, people always say to me, well, how do you balance all these different fats? Well, make it easy. If you're eating a meat-based diet, you're getting most of your saturated fats easily enough there just out of the meats you're eating. So the only other two you have to focus on is, use olive oil or eat eggs, avocado, so you get some monounsaturated fats that way, and then your polyunsaturated fats, if you take fish oil every day, you got that covered right there. So, what I wanted to talk about your cell membrane, it's really important, since the fats you take in create your cell wall membrane, you want to make sure it's important for that to stay very fluid. And trans fats are not the way to do that. Omega-3s help your cell wall stay fluid so that everything can communicate and work together, and things can move, flow back and forth. So that's what your aim is when it comes to that too, is eating those healthy fats and putting that in your cell wall membrane is going to keep it pliable and be able to communicate and get the job done that it needs to do, where trans fats pack in really tight, and they make that cell wall tight,
Mm-hmm.
so you're not going to be able to absorb things
Mm-hmm.
like you should, and your cells can't communicate with each other
Mm-hmm.
like they need to.
And that could come across as just like hardened arteries or bad skin or starting to get bad eyes, or
Yes.
I mean, it can come across as a lot of things. Acne. It
A lot
can
of
come
different
across
things.
as a lot of things.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
So, balance your fats and get rid of the processed food. And the one thing that I read, which I thought was interesting, because you're seeing, of course, when the industry gets going on something, so you're seeing coconut oil spray in a can
Coconut
out
oil,
there,
you're right.
and you're seeing these healthy touted,
Yep.
palm oil in, if it's in a box or a can.
Yep.
Or needs a label.
Yep. Odds are.
It's industrialized at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So stick with the simple, basic coconut oil out of
Right. You can see it.
Yeah, and you can.
It's hard and thick, and
right.
it has to be warmed up to get it to
Liquefy so that
liquefy,
you can
and
use it.
That's, yep.
So-
They shouldn't be able to come out of a can.
No. I thought that was kind of because people have said, "Oh, they have coconut oil in a spray can now," and
Yeah.
I'm like, "Really?"
Yeah.
So anyway, that's fats, and they're not a bad thing, and if you choose them wisely.
Yeah.
And they're very tasty. I
Yeah.
think they really make your food taste good, and they're very filling.
Yes.
They'll help you, cut back on your carbohydrates.
Carbohydrate intake.
You're right. If you eat enough healthy fats along with your protein.
All right.
Okay.
Good stuff.
Okay.
Fantastic. So, watch your fat intake. Really, like she said, the easiest thing, not the easiest, it's not easy. The best thing to do, don't buy anything in a box or in a can. And that alone not only will eliminate a lot of the omega-3s and a lot of the unhealthy fats that you might be getting, it'll also eliminate a lot of the bad carbohydrates that you're getting as well. So, don't buy anything in a box or in a can, and that'll help a ton.
You are what you eat.
You are what you eat.
Yes.
That's literally
That's the truth.
Yeah. So great. If you guys have any questions for Trevis, you can email her at treves@thrive4strength.com. If you watched our last episode, I'm sorry. What number did I say today was? 24?
Today's 25.
Today's 25. Whether or not I said that or not, I can't remember. Today's 25. If you watched 23, Trevis sat down and asked me some questions. If you have some questions you would like answered, whether they're nutrition based or fitness based, because I'll gladly sit her down and ask questions that she can't write out and plan for. You can send them. You can send them to her if you'd like them answered personally, or you can get Thrive Fitness on Twitter at the Thrive Pack, or go to Facebook and you can find Thrive Fitness and Thrive Nutrition there as well.
Yes. Okay. Good
All right,
job.
you have anything?
No, I'm done.
You're done? Nope, that's the end of my notes. All right. Thank you guys for watching. We appreciate it. Have a great rest of the day.
Good job.